as questions swirled over whether US President Donald Trump considers both Ukraine and its President Volodymyr Zelensky expendable in his quest for better ties with Russia, Zelensky has held out hope for America's continued support. In a lengthy statement this morning, he maintained his unequivocal rejection of Russia as the enemy, saying the country is killing Ukrainians. He reiterated that Kyiv is ready to sign the minerals sharing agreement with Washington. He called it the first step towards security guarantees, maintaining it is not enough. A ceasefire without security guarantees, he said, is dangerous for Ukraine. We've been fighting for 3 years, and Ukrainian people need to know that America is on our side, he said. To understand the view from Kyiv after the Oval Office pummeling that Zelensky was subjected to by Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, MCR spoke to Inna Sovsun, a member of Ukraine's parliament and a prominent political voice against both Russia and Putin. She spoke from Kyiv.
What has been the overall reaction in Ukraine to the disastrous Trump-Zelensky meeting?
Well, I think at first everyone was just in shock. We didn't see that coming. We have not expected that the president would be so blatantly attacked. I mean, we knew that the communication between Trump and Zelensky is tough. It's difficult. It's complicated. We knew it's not going to be an easy walk, and it's going to be a difficult conversation. I think nobody expected that it would be so public, and B, it will be so aggressive towards President Zelensky. So I think everyone was just shocked with how it all of a sudden, it seemed like the conversation was going on pretty well, and then suddenly several comments, particularly by J.D. Vance, and then it exploded. And then there was, of course, except for shock, there was also a very strong feeling of injustice, because we are the state that has been attacked. Yet President Trump has been attacking Ukraine, has been attacking Ukrainian president, claiming that it is our fault that we don't want peace. And at the same time, I had in my mind all evening last night the conversation between the American side and the Russians in El Riyadh about a week ago, and they were all nice, friendly, and cozy. And that's just difficult to comprehend. Why are you talking to your allies like this, yet to the people who have attacked another country, who are responsible for the murders of thousands of Ukrainians, you are nice and cozy to them? So I think that was that led to this very strong feeling of injustice being done to all of us that we have witnessed yesterday at the Oval. And yeah, that was the initial reaction. Now there is a bit more rationalizing and trying to move forward, but of course the initial reaction was very emotional, and I can understand the president truly. I've been asked this a couple of times over the last 24 hours. Do you think that he overreacted? And it's very difficult to imagine how one would react at his place. Because he comes from the context where he is the leader of the country, which is being attacked daily, which is losing people daily. And then suddenly hearing what he heard, that he's not ready, that it's his responsibility that people are dying, and so on and so forth. I can imagine that this would provoke emotional response from anybody. So do I wish he reacted more calmly? Yes. Do I think it is possible? I try to imagine myself at his place, and I think I would have reacted in the same manner, just because of where we come from and what we have been through.
One of the popular perceptions within the US media is that the whole thing was a setup, in the sense it was designed, sort of thing. In fact, President Trump himself said this is great television. Do you think it was a sort of a manufactured ambush for the sake of the world to see?
Well, it's a scary assumption, because if that is so, then it's not just the emotional response and lack of connect between the two leaders. It's actually the policy of the United States administration, which is basically siding with the aggressor against the victim. So I've read those comments. I can imagine it can be one of the options. It is a very scary one, though, because One thing, if it was an emotional outburst, that we can walk through, that we can talk through and we can discuss that and think that, yeah, okay, then how do we get from that? People get emotional from time to time. But if this was intended, then I think both the world, Ukraine, but also the US is in much bigger trouble if that is so. I don't think I don't have access to any internal information to confirm or deny this, but that is, of course, it is a possibility, of course, that we have to keep in mind, but it is a very scary one, though.
But it's now breaking news that President Trump has almost a visceral dislike for President Zelensky. It's been said again and again. And I was told that perhaps it was unwise for President Zelensky to seek a meeting in the White House at this time. Do you think it was prudent for him to visit at this point?
Well, as I understand, the decision was mutual, that he should come to DC to sign that minerals deal that was very much pushed through by the Americans. And I think that as President Zelensky saw that, and I'm here again speaking as a member of opposition, but I'm completely supporting the president here, and I believe that he was acting on Ukraine's interests in this situation. But our reading of the situation was like this. Americans were pushing through this minerals deal. They needed it signed. The president is the one to do that. So there should be a signing ceremony. Our understanding, again, that was part of the debate, right? We didn't like the idea of minerals deal because it felt like we as a victim are being forced to pay reparations. That's just unthinkable. But okay, if that is what we need to do to have continued support from the United States, okay, we can play along with that. So we played along. We got to an agreement. There was an initial understanding that this is the deal that both sides are ready to sign. But of course, signing this sort of deal only makes sense to Ukraine, giving up something in exchange for something, right?
Right.
But nothing was offered in exchange. But I think that what President Zelensky was expecting is, okay, so we are ready to make this step. We are ready to move forward with this, like it or not. But then there should be a next part of this conversation, which is, so what do we get in exchange? So I think he went there to negotiate this second part of the deal, because the deal is where two sides get something out of this. But at the end, it felt like Ukraine just has to give up minerals and to agree to the ceasefire, while getting no guarantees of anything. And at the same time, we have to remember that it's not Ukraine who initiated the fire. It was the Ukraine who initiated the war. So let's say we agree to the ceasefire, we stop fighting back, and then literally 2 hours after this press conference took place, we had yet another air raid alert over here in Kyiv, with 150 drones attacking civilian cities. So if we agree to that, and Russians again, and it's a nightly occurrence. Every night we had one of the same thing happening with those drones flying over. So we stop shooting them down. Then happens what? I'm still, and I think that is the biggest mystery that I don't think was pointed out properly in the media. So what was the peace deal that was being offered? What was the deal that President Zelensky declined? Just stop the fire, just on our side? That's not a deal. That's a suicide.
Right. Now, at this stage, what happens now, because the sense I get from the Ukrainian position is that as long as President Putin is at the other end of the negotiating table, it's sort of dead end. What then is the way out?
Well, at this point, the result that we need to achieve is to get back at the negotiating table with the Americans. We have to come to an understanding with them. We are not saying that we are done with them. We don't want anything to do with them, because I believe that despite everything we have seen yesterday, at its core, Ukraine and America do share the same values, unlike America and Russia. After all, despite all the complexities of the situation and everything else, we both believe in democracy. We both believe in human rights. We both believe in respect to human dignity. That is what our nations share, despite very different tracks of history that we have been through. So I do not see America aligning with an authoritarian state where people get killed, murdered, where people's rights matter nothing. So it's just impossible to comprehend how an alliance can last for a long period of time. So I do think that we have to get back to the conversation with the Americans. I think that was the message of President Zelensky as well when he went to Fox News and then provided other comments to the media, that yes, we have to get back to the table with the Americans. However, I think we have to rethink how we structure that conversation with the Americans. Because one, it's critically important to talk to our European allies. And President Zelensky is in London now. There will be a summit there. I think it's critically important to understand what European partners are eager to contribute to Ukraine's aid, not just, the words of support. Actions speak louder than words. We should be getting some very, very direct aid from the Europeans. Because if Europeans come together now and say, okay, so we have 5 Patriot systems, we are willing to donate that to you. Then you will not depend on Americans. You will get that from us. So we have the right to sell them. We have the missiles. We have something else. We are willing to provide that to you next week. That will strengthen the negotiating position, both of Ukraine and Europe. Because for Ukraine, that will mean that we are not that much dependent on the United States. For Europe, it will, give them a say in the foreign in the international politics right now. Second, very important, I do think that it was also an individual clash between 2 very different people coming from very different contexts. We should probably, at least for a while, avoid direct conversations between 2 presidents. I don't think that this would be a good idea. So we should find some other people to speak on Ukraine's behalf. I'm not in any way suggesting that we should listen to Lindsey Graham and that President Zelensky should resign. It's not up for any American politician to decide who has to be Ukrainian president, or any Russian politician for that matter, or from anyone else. It's for Ukrainian people to decide. But I do think that we can try to find someone other speaking on behalf of Ukraine who will be not as controversial to the Oval Office right now. And 3, I think we should try to find a right mediator, someone to whom both sides can listen to, who can mediate between the 2 sides.
If not President Zelensky, who can represent at this stage? Because it's all very frayed, the relationship.
Yeah, indeed. It doesn't even have to be someone with an official position in the government. It can be someone who has the recognition, who has the name. It can also be a foreigner. I was thinking about, let's say, a former president of Lithuania or someone else like that. Someone who has Ukraine's interests at heart, but who will be more, with whom Trump will be more open to negotiating. So I think we should find someone like that to speak on Ukraine's behalf, who can do that. Because of course we can suggest the prime minister, some of the ministers, but I don't think I think that they are all very much connected to President Zelensky, and then it's going to take a while before the direct conversation between 2 sides can take place.
But do you fear that President Trump regards both President Zelensky and Ukraine as expendable for the larger project of friendship with Russia and Putin particularly?
Well, there was this feeling at one point, right? I think that he did say that President Zelensky disrespected America and him in the Oval Office. But the truth is that we also didn't see lots of empathy to the sufferings of Ukrainians from the American president. He was saying that, of course, you have millions of people being killed, which is not true. We don't have millions. Luckily, that's a very strong exaggeration. But the very fact that he basically was saying that you could have ended this war earlier, but you didn't. I think that hurt us. That was most hurtful comment that we have heard from him, because basically he was blaming the victim for the victim resisting the attack, right? And that's not how allies should be behaving. That's not an appropriate behavior. So I think it was emotionally very difficult to see all of that after everything we have been through. So, we'll see how the process will continue. But emotionally, it was a very charged moment for all of us.
There is a lot of celebration in Moscow in the aftermath. Do you believe consciously or unconsciously Trump is doing Putin's bidding?
Well, I've heard several comments from different analysts debating about that. Someone is saying that he's after the economic interest in dealing with Russia, and he's looking for making himself or America richer. That can be one of the explanations. Some other analysts I've read are saying that Trump likes that Putin, being a dictator, has the full control over the situation in Russia, and he feels similarity in political approaches. Those are all very scary options if you think about that, for America to begin with, for the world as well, of course. But I do believe that we do have enough evidence to say that Trump is much friendlier to Russia than he is to Ukraine. That he is more willing to deal with the Russians than he is willing to deal with the Ukrainians. Whatever the reasons for that, I don't think we can know for sure, of course, but he's definitely more prone to communicating with them than with us.
Do you believe there is some wisdom in making Ukraine predominantly a European project now? The US may or may not play any role, but Europe can collectively stand up and say that this is our project, it's our existence that we are talking about. Why is it not happening?
Well, I very much hope it will happen. From the outbursts of reaction from the European politicians on different levels we have seen last night after everything that has happened, that does give me some hope that they will finally get together and try to understand how they can help Ukraine together without the American aid. And of course, there is lots of talk in Europe right now. And by Europe, I don't just mean the EU. The UK is very, very closely involved in those conversations right now as well, about the European defense system, which is something that we as Ukrainians do support. However, at the same time, I also think that it is a very dangerous development for the world altogether. I mean, again, midterm for Ukraine, that is probably the only option. There should be a European architecture of security that can defend the continent, or we can't continue to rely on America for the defense of the European continent. Yet I do think that this will finalize the breakup of relationships between Europe and America, and then will mean the breakdown of the Western world as an entity. So I very much hope that the Americans will still get together with the Europeans and will, because they do share the same values, at least they did. So I think that there is lots of talks about European security right now. There are lots of people saying that we should find some European solutions. And it is probably what will be happening, but I also see the risks in that development.
You spoke of the breakdown of the Western alliance. Isn't that precisely the goal that Putin has always had? And he obviously seems to be succeeding quite handsomely.
Yeah, indeed, and that is exactly the reason why I'm cautious about that. Again, in the midterm perspective, this might be beneficial to Ukraine, but I do think in the longer term perspective, if we take a broader view, speaking not just as a Ukrainian but as a global citizen, I think that will mean that Putin actually won. Right. That is why I very much hope that there will be enough politicians in the United States and on your side of the ocean who will speak against that, keeping in mind that the winner of that will not be Europe or America. The winner in that situation would be Russia, will be China, it will be everyone who was looking towards the dissolution of the Western alliance altogether.
To conclude, what do you think is the future for President Zelensky, and the political future, I mean?
It's very difficult to judge right now because, as you understand, it's very difficult to predict what is to happen in Ukraine politically. He did get a huge boost of support among Ukrainians. Even the former President Poroshenko, whom President Zelensky famously sanctioned about 2 weeks ago, he came in support of President Zelensky. So everyone is saying that, yeah, we are criticizing our presidents, but it's our job to criticize our president.
Right.
No one else should be doing that. So I think there is a boost of support. However, we understand that the base case scenario elections will take place if suddenly the war stops tomorrow, half a year from today. I think many things can change in the meantime.
Yeah.
So it's kind of very difficult to predict at this point.